Okay, welcome to the December 17th Haldane Board of Education workshop meeting. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Vice President Valentine here. Trustee Clemenson?
Here.
Trustee Cooper?
Here.
Trustee McNow?
Here.
And President Clements is excused for the evening.
Approval of the agenda. I need to make a motion to amend the agenda to add a short executive session to the end of the meeting to discuss the hiring of a certain individual. We have a motion.
So moved. Second.
Do I have to have recommended action for that?
I will be, yes. Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the interim superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the amended agenda.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great. So the next meeting of the Haldane Board of Education is a business meeting. It'll be held on Tuesday, January 7th, 2025 at 7 p.m. here in the Middle High School Library. Yes, and I just wanted to say welcome. It's the December crush. I don't know if anyone else is feeling the crunch of all the things that are happening. We just came off of, was it 2 weekends ago, the Haldane High School production of Macbeth, which I heard was stellar with the two casts. Basketball season is in full swing. I think Haldane has 5 teams and then 1 shared modified team with Garrison. And it is concert season as well. So we had the high school and middle school last week. Tomorrow night is the elementary school concert at 7. And I'm always amazed. We talk about this, I feel like, all the time, but I'm always amazed at what the teachers, what our music teachers and our music staff can pull out of our kids. So it's amazing to me. So congratulations to that. Mr. Albano.
Sure. First, I just want to wish everyone a joyful holiday, happy and healthy New Year to the board and community. I also had the privilege of attending Macbeth, as well as the middle and high school concerts. And I will say all 3 were magnificent. I heard of Haldane's performing arts reputation for many years while I was serving down in Garrison, but I never got the opportunity to actually enjoy a performance firsthand. And let me just give a shout out to all the people who made it possible. Certainly our director, Martha Mikalakos, I believe I have it right. Dan McGrarty, who oversees our music department chair. Jessica Stein, music and band teacher. Sam Sauer, music and chorus. And Eric Starr, who I believe was with Haldane and now has come back to lead the jazz band. And I will say, particularly the high school performance, I mean, it ended with a standing ovation. And I've been to many, many music concerts in schools over the years, and it's hard to receive a standing ovation, but it was genuine. It was electrifying. I think the last song, I wrote it down, was Louis Prima's Sing, Sing, Sing. I mean, just what an incredible performance. So thoroughly enjoyed it. Congratulations to all the students who participated and all the people who worked so hard to put that together. Now, just getting onto some education business. I'm going to ask Michelle to help me. Last week, Michelle and I attended Commissioner Betty Rosa held a town hall meeting in our region. She invited many officials. She was here with her top officials from state ed. Dana Levenberg was there, our state assemblywoman, Shelley Mayer, who's a state senator and also the head of the education committee, and many other people from state ed, and then board members and superintendents from throughout this region, from probably 4 or 5 different counties. So it was well attended, hosted by BOCES, and there are some really important initiatives that the commissioner joined us to let us know. And Michelle took diligent notes, much better than I did. So, Michelle, would you share some of the highlights?
Happy to share some of the notes I took. So the main two topics that were discussed at the town hall were regionalization and the new graduation requirements. Certainly regionalization got most of the airtime. It's on everybody's mind. The chancellor wanted to clarify that participation in this process of regionalization is not mandatory. We were told what is mandatory, or what they are mandating is a conversation about it. Do we want to do it? Do we want to participate, or will we choose not to? They moved the due date for the strengths and needs survey to middle of January 15th. And I think Mr. Albano has started working on that. We were highly encouraged to participate. They sort of framed it as, what is your school doing that's creative and innovative? Here is what we would do. Here's what we could do if we had the resources and the pathway. So it's our opportunity to highlight our school to Albany. They're gathering ideas from the field, and they couched it as a chance to kind of ask for things. What does our district need to think big in our working with other local schools, and kind of make our, what do we need to make our aspirations a reality? For example, they talked about, would we be interested in having our high schoolers participate in internships in healthcare? Might we be interested in having our high schoolers participate in internships in New York City? Kind of, would we be working with other local schools and maybe making something like that a reality? Those were just a couple examples. They addressed concerns about local control and how there will not be a loss of local control, really focused on, this is not a consolidation effort. This is not a merging effort. It's not about the state looking for ways to reduce foundation aid, which was a concern expressed by some of the school leaders there. The data from the needs and strengths survey will be compiled. Submitting it commits us to nothing. Just because we write these ideas down and submit it doesn't mean that then we have to follow up and do them. It just will allow an overarching look at how the schools can better collaborate. So that's regionalization. Also, graduation requirements, the new grad requirements were talked about. Still very much in the early days. Dr. Rosa talked about the fact that it was really born from the concept that application of skills in the real world may be much more indicative of readiness to graduate than a test score. She said, teachers talk all the time about, how they're, working on project-based learning, integration across subject areas and across grade levels, and none of that really matters at the end of the day when it boils down to passing the regents. Certainly there was concern expressed about the standardization. Will we have a menu to choose from? How will colleges know? If each school is kind of putting together these different graduation requirements and, kind of looking at the, profile of a learner in a different way, how will colleges have a sense of, what is a student coming out of Haldane? How does a student compare to students coming out of other schools? Dr. Rosa said, there's already many courses that are required for graduation that have local assessments, not standardized ones. So she said, it's kind of doing the same thing. And it sounds like they might be considering kind of sharing rubrics, but the way that the goals are met and the assessments that are created might be local. So again, this is like really in the early stages in development. And the last thing that I thought was interesting that she talked about was this teach.org. Apparently, there's a website, and I guess different states are taking it on. There's teachnewyork.org, which is an online certification process for teachers. And we were told that there's more students enrolled in that than in teacher prep programs at colleges. And that so it's really meeting a need. There's also a much more diverse population of students enrolled. So it's like this huge teacher prep program. And she talked about maybe developing some regional initiatives to establish it as a teacher ed program that students, and maybe even in middle school and high school, can start kind of thinking about if they're interested in going into the field of education. And, kind of how can teachnewyork.org kind of be, incorporated into middle school or high school curriculum for blossoming teachers. So we were, and to make kids aware and to encourage them to go into education as a career choice. So those are my notes. I don't know if you have anything you want to add on to that.
That was incredibly thorough, Michelle. I'll just add a couple of things. this Teach.org program that she referred to is really a response to listening to leaders throughout the state, and there are real teacher shortages, not just in New York, but nationwide. But particularly in New York, there are certain subject areas, special education, foreign languages, the sciences, mathematics, where we're seeing the pools really shrink, and it's harder and harder to find young people who want to pursue this as a career. So in response to that, they launched this initiative, and I was pleased to hear that enrollment is increasing, and it's being able to attract some young people into the field, because that really is very needed. With regards to the graduation requirements, just to put it in perspective, looking at the time frame, the current, and Julia, help me with this if I get it wrong, because I know Mrs. Sniffen has been working and also sharing information with the high school faculty, but the current ninth graders, cohort of 2024, will be the first that will not need Regents exams to graduate, although they will take Regents exams.
It's actually 2026, 2027 cohort. So freshmen in the 26-27 school year won't be required to take Regents exams towards graduation. It doesn't mean yet that they're totally gone, because ESSA, which is federal regulation, may still require us to have a standardized measure to receive federal funding. So the 26-27 cohort, which would mean incoming freshmen that year, will not need to take Regents exam towards graduation requirement.
So they will be under the new credit.
They will be under the new criteria, or standard, whatever that exactly looks like, yet to be determined. Yes. They're talking a lot about a consumer type mathematics component and an environmental component, in addition to the seals, which we already have established, but it's still great.
Thank you. Thank you. So the board will hear, I'm sure, many more updates in the months and years ahead. Also, Michelle, for clarification, Josh Elder is doing the bulk of the regionalization data collection, and I offered him today help, but he really is running with this. And again, I think it was wise for the commissioner and the state to postpone the deadline. Within the Lower Hudson region, the superintendents did have some concern. Our superintendents group found some language that was really not well known, but in the state register, there was language that indicated that BOCES district superintendents do have the authority to have districts share. That language has since been changed, because when we discovered that language, people thought, well, gee, it was rolled out rather quickly, and we were concerned about foundation aid. Seems like the governor is signaling that she will not pull back on foundation aid, at least this year, and it is an election year. So, your constituents and people lobbying do matter. They listen to those voices. So the regionalization, I was pleased when I saw the commissioner give reassurances, change that language, and give reassurances that districts will not be forced to share resources or to partner with other districts. Now, Haldane has many, many partnerships, and they date back decades. Whether it's sports mergers, sending our students to OC-Ed programs at BOCES, partnerships with other districts for various things. So I think we do a good job of sharing resources. Our partnership with Garrison, the board, and I thank you, we all visited Garrison, and Ms. Sniffen and Dr. Cashin and Tom Cunningham presented on our high school program, and we received a lovely letter from the new superintendent there, how much they appreciated us sharing all the great stuff that's happening here. So we do, I think, an awfully good job of sharing. But as Michelle said, I see no downside, because this evening you don't have to take a formal vote, but I would like to poll the four of you. I've already spoken to Peggy. And if you are in agreement, unless you're opposed to this, will move forward. Josh will enter all the data. They want to know everything about us, our programs, courses, extracurricular programs, athletic programs. Everything is going to get entered, student performance data, and then sent up to New York State. And then in the months ahead, they will be looking at opportunities with districts in our area. So again, with assurances that there's going to be no forced collaboration or sharing, I just want to make sure that the board is comfortable with us moving forward and being part of the regionalization. A handful of schools are not, and their boards have decided not to participate. But I would say that's maybe 5% of the schools in our area. Any thoughts or any questions from the board members?
Do you need to know now? Can we let you know at the next board meeting?
Absolutely.
After we kind of stew with it and
yes.
Is that all right with everybody?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds good. Right?
Any questions for Michelle or me? Okay. All right. Well, we'll, if we get any more information, we're happy to share more, and we can make. In the meantime, Josh will continue working because there's an awful lot of work and with the anticipation that we will move forward, but we'll revisit this at our first January meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll add it to the agenda for that one.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Okay. Thanks. I'm turning it over to, is it Deputy Tolve or Mrs. Jammin? Mrs. Jammin, who wants to recognize an exceptional high school student. Best kind of news.
All right. So a lot of times I speak more informally, but I'm gonna actually read the formal document that I wrote this evening for Parker. Parker, come on up here. Take off your coat. Come on. Stand. Your parents, this is their chance to be really proud of you. Come stand here. I get to be proud of you too. So on September 20th, one of our elementary students misunderstood his family's instructions for getting home after school. After being dismissed as a walker, he got turned around and he became quite lost. And as an aside, very lost. Had his mom gotten to school later and said, "Where's my child?" we would have had no idea of where to even start looking for him. He didn't have a cell phone or any way to contact his parents. Luckily for him, Parker was walking in the area. Many people could have passed this child by, not because they're unkind or uncaring, but because they're busy or distracted. They have electronics and schedules that pull them in many different directions. However, Parker noticed, whether because he has a young sister about this age, his exceptional character, or his caring spirit, or a combination of all three, something made Parker stop and take notice of the child and that something was out of place. He wasn't able to help him find his way home because he didn't recognize the address. But with quick thinking and problem solving, Parker called the elementary school and got in touch with me. He explained who he had found, where he was, and that he was concerned that the child was too far from home and needed help. He agreed to stay with him until I could get there. When I arrived, the child was calm and smiling, not at all what I expected given the circumstances. This told me that Parker had been reassuring, protective, and kind while he stayed with the child. This act reflects the highest ideals and responsibilities of citizenship, including compassion for others, commitment to community welfare, proactive problem solving, and dedication to helping those in need. Parker's actions serve as an example to his peers and show that he serves as a role model to younger students of our community. So there are two. These are from Deputy Tolve. I was just in charge of keeping them flat. These are letters from me. Get 2 copies, one for each of your parents to frame and embarrass you with forever. Thank you. And then we'll take a picture from there. But thank you very much. I don't know where he would be. So
thank you.
Well done.
Thank
you for all the work you do.
Thank you.
I'll go back to my work.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Now we have two more exceptional high school students here to give us an update of the high school. Our student advisors, William O'Hara and Zane Del Pozo.
Hey guys.
Hello everyone. We are the president and vice president of the junior class student council. So we're here just to present on what's been going on in school. All right. So to start off, I'm going to talk about the Science Bowl. So we've had 4 students, Seth Lunenpack, Max Cupper, your son, Concept Esther, and Lincoln Whalen have signed up for a Science Bowl that will take place in March of 2025. And this group is led by our earth science teacher, Mr. Posniak. And this contest, teams will answer questions to compete in that competition. Hopefully win. So yeah.
Now moving on, the International Club will be doing a fundraiser. They will be selling candy canes and full setup bracelets on Wednesday, December 18th in the high school lobby. The candy cane sales will benefit Doctors Without Borders. Doctors Without Borders is a non-governmental charity that provides medical care mainly to conflict zones and countries affected by endemic diseases. And private donors account for 90% of their funding, so it is important. The Pulsarta sale will continue on Thursday, December 19th. Pulsarta Project is a fair trade nonprofit organization that educates, empowers, and connects Central American artists with students in more than 3,800 U.S. schools by selling colorful hand-woven bracelets.
So moving on, recently we had a visit of Garrison students to Haldane, just 8th graders that were deciding on whether to go to here or O'Neill or an alternate high school. That was on November 6th. There were 29 students that came and toured the high school. Tomorrow, we will have 8 students tour the school, and they will shadow freshmen for half the day just to see what it's like and how to get a feel of like what it's like to be at Haldane. And also soon, January 16th, we'll have a BOCES tech tour for the sophomore class, so they have the ability to see and explore alternate education options for high school, and so they don't have to just use classes at Haldane.
Now, one thing that the teachers have been doing this week is secretly participating in their own Spirit Week.
Oh.
Monday was Lumberjack Chic. Tuesday, today was Blizzard Day, wear blue and white gear. Tomorrow will be Dressed Like a Student Day. I'm excited for that one. Thursday will be Anything But a Cup, so you can drink out of anything but a cup as a teacher. Friday will be Tacky Festive Wear.
Fun.
So like Mr. Albano said, we recently had a successful play, Macbeth, on December 6th and December 7th. That's the Friday and Saturday of 2 weeks ago. Lead roles were played by freshmen through seniors, with juniors Lucky Bell and Merrick Williams playing the lead role of Macbeth, and seniors Sophie Koch and Helen Hutchison playing the lead role of Lady Macbeth on their respective nights. And then a word of thanks to Martha Michalakos and Andrea McHugh for directing the successful play.
Now, for chorus and music, we want to congratulate Oliver Petkus and Delia Starr for their selection and participation in the New York State School Music Association Conference All-State. Oliver participated in the mixed chorus, and Delia received the Young Composers Award with the performance of her piano piece and participation in composers' workshops. Lastly, we want to congratulate numerous students who participated in the Area All-State Music Festival on November 23rd.
All right. That's it. Yeah, that's all we got. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Hold on one second.
Some questions.
If we have questions, can we ask you? Okay.
Oh, there's always questions. It's not a freebie, you don't just get up there and just read off a paper. Yeah, I am curious. Do you guys read Shakespeare in English class at Haldane?
So each year, the sophomore class reads Macbeth towards the end of the year. That's English honors reads it towards the end of the year, and Regents English reads it towards the beginning of the year. So sophomore grade and above kind of has a background of what's going on.
So they have a good background.
But also the teachers before the play had a little like catch up on what happened in Macbeth and like what's going on, and just so kids understood the plot, because obviously Old English is a little hard to understand. But
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
What did juniors
um,
There's
Freshmen read Romeo and Juliet.
Romeo and Juliet.
Sophomores read Macbeth.
And then the juniors in honors.
That might be Hamlet.
Hamlet.
Hamlet?
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah. Oh, good. Great. Thank you.
any other questions?
Go ahead.
Do you happen to know for the sophomore trip to BOCES, is that for the whole 10th grade class, or do you have to sign up to go?
It's only you have to sign up.
Yeah,
if you choose
it's
to go.
available to everyone in the
Okay.
sophomore class, but yeah, you have to sign up to be able to go.
Only if you're interested.
Okay, thanks.
What could you? I wanted to ask about the Science Bowl, where it's located, and if you know anything about it.
I'm not sure where it's located. I know it's taking place in March, so there's a ways to go till then.
Yeah.
Still plenty of time to sign up for kids. I might even take part in that. I'm not sure.
Do
it. They might need some more students for the team. So yeah. I'm not sure where it takes place. But yeah, it's kind of like a decathlon for science and mathematics. And a range of like all sciences and mathematics.
Is it a program that we've typically participated in, or is this relatively new?
This is relatively new. I think this might actually be the first year. Seth Lunenpack and Mr. Posniak kind of started like a club that students can join. They have meetings every Tuesday about like practicing for the competition.
Earth science.
Earth science.
Yeah. It's got earth
But
science,
it's a wide
chemistry,
range.
physics. Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
That's good. Thank you very much.
Good. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for coming in.
Great. And now we have, this is our required annual presentation. It's our workshop topic for tonight. Our required annual presentation on state assessment data with our Director of Curriculum, Josh Haldane.
Thank you.
Right. Move out of the way.
Relocate for you, Josh.
Set up here.
Good evening, Board of Ed. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you tonight about our 2023-2024 New York State assessment results. I thought it was very timely to go off Trustee Covers talks about the new graduation pathways and the concept around all these really great project-based learning experiences that are happening, combined with or coupled against the current measures that are used to assess students in New York State. And it is good news to hear that they've at least recognized that there seems to be a disparity between the two at times, and to recognize that intelligence takes multiple forms and that there are other pathways for students to achieve and to demonstrate proficiency against these standards other than standardized ways. But that being said, I am here to talk about all the standardized ways. New York State currently continues to go through and does this. And so, you know, from a higher perspective, I continue to share this here in Haldane. When we talk about assessments, we are grounded in conversations around how do we assess what we value. And this community of learners has come together and articulate these 6 Haldane essentials, which since my time here in Haldane, coming on my 4th year, represents our learner profile, before learner profiles, about what this community values as students graduate and go through the Haldane Central School District. Critical thinking, problem solving, communication, growth mindset, emotional intelligence, and wellness. I would say that the New York State assessments tackle some of these at times, right? There is some validity to that. And I think that there are also aspects of this that we see gaps in that. But that is our local decisions of how we go through that. It's another good reminder around curriculum development and how in New York State, we all have common standards to achieve, but the methods in which students go about achieving those standards is differentiated based upon the values of the district in which they live in. That's why you can go to Haldane, or you could go to Beacon, or you can go to Harrison, and you can see these implemented in very different ways at times, based upon some of the values that the communities have put forth. As I kind of also get into this idea around data, one of the things that I would like to share with the board, this is a goal that's been developed over the last couple of years with our administrative team. And it represents kind of a consensus approach for how we want to enter into conversations around using different aspects of data, whether at a district level, grade level, building level, or individual class size or individual classes. And so the goal is the continued development of a systematic approach to integrating data that complements our processes for supporting and grounding conversations, evaluating programs, promoting inquiry, and informing decision-making at the classroom, grade, building, and district level. And so one of the things that I want to share with you a little bit later tonight is the ways in which our district undergoes this process of utilizing data to fulfill this goal. Always a work in progress, but I think our administrative team has made some really good inroads in the last couple of years around using data to move program forward and inform the decisions that we're making. Some of it is New York State assessments, and some of them are not. Right? So assessment practices essentially come down to, these three. We have these classroom assessments. We have our NWA MAP data, which is a universal screener that we utilize. And then there's the New York State Education Department Board of Regents examinations, which will be the first part of what we'll talk about. But essentially the idea is the triangulation of these three measures, to be thinking about progress and how our students are doing, how healthy our district is, and how aligned and healthy our curriculum are on a day-to-day basis or a year-to-year basis. Right? Oh, didn't realize this was this. New York State assessment. So the first part that I want to go back to is this presentation is in two parts, right? The first part is the compliance aspect. So we are mandated to every board to present how we did on last year's assessments results, which is what I'm going to go through with you in the first part of this presentation. And then the second part of the presentation is what I alluded to, which is all the ways in which we feel our administrative team and teachers are actually utilizing data to inform our curricular conversations at multiple levels. And I have it grounded in a few examples. And this is based upon feedback I've had with certain board members, as well as presentation last year was not just understanding what the results are, but the ways in which we actually utilize those results to kind of inform our program here in Haldane. So the New York State 3 through 8 assessments are on-demand tests that are designed to measure really two things. Students' proficiency with the New York State learning standards or progress towards proficiency at a specific grade level at a specific point in time, right? So they're given in the spring of every year, and they're aligned against grade level standards, 3 through 8. We give them in English language arts, 3 through 8, math 3 through 8, and science shift is 5 and 8. So last year was the first year that grade 5 took the exam. It was traditionally 4th grade, right? The tests are administered untimed. It's great in 2 sessions. The items are aligned with New York State learning standards and developed with a sample of New York State teachers. There are a variety of multiple choice and open-ended items on each test. The questions are designed to measure critical thinking, problem solving, and written language, and often require students to describe and defend their reasoning. So there is alignment to our Haldane essentials in that manner. And some of the questions are released with the test results. Embedded in those are sample questions that you're trying to test out on kids moving forward. And the results are definitely shared with teachers and parents. So one aspect is, purpose is to measure individual students' progress towards proficiency. And the second measure or rationale is whether districts have met required targets in terms of New York State accountability in the Every Student Succeeds Act as well. That information is compiled to determine whether or not school districts have done that. Oh, sorry about that. An overview. So not to be lost in this conversation is that over the last, I'd say 4 or 5 years, many different disciplines or subject areas have undergone new alignment to new standards, and they've been rolled out over a series of time. And our teachers here in Haldane have done a tremendous job of continuously to align their curriculum against these new standards to prepare students for the tests that you're going to see and the results that you're going to see. So didn't want to get lost in this scenario. So last year was the first administration of the new elementary grade 5 and the intermediate grade 8 science test align to the New York State Next Generation Science Standards. A pretty wealthy overhaul for science in terms of terminology, as well as how test questions were administered to students. Very, very, very different shift in those ways. Computer-based testing was mandated in grades 5 and 8 for ELA math and science. And in June of 2024, it was the first administration of the Algebra 1 Regents aligned to the New York State standards for math. Moving forward to this June, you will see the first administration of the Geometry Regents aligned to the New York State standards. The first administration of the Biology and Earth and Space Science Regents exam aligned to New York State Next Generation Science Standards. So let me pause for a second there. Districts were given the option this year to either administer the new assessments or continue to administer the current assessment that's in place and has been in place. Many districts, including Haldane, have chosen to administer the current assessment that has been in place, with the idea of let's see this test as it comes out and utilize that to further ground curricular work to make sure our students as prepared as possible moving forward in the new assessments in that way. Right? And computer-based testing is going to be expanded to grades 4, 5, 6, and 8. And I believe 7th grade is just jumping on board too. We've decided based upon how students did last year that we were just going to open that up to 7th grade as well. So 3rd would be the only one that we are not. We're intentionally holding off for another year on our little 3rd graders before they're taking the test that way. And then just fast forward another year is you can just see that there's a new ELA Regents exam aligned to new standards, chemistry and physics, and then computer-based testing. So the purpose here is just to kind of show by the end of next June kind of represents this end of the alignment era of these new standards that have been rolled out since the beginning of last year, so to speak, right? Tremendous amount of work by our teachers is what I'm trying to get at in terms of just preparing and just keeping up with that aspect of it. So that being said, I'm going to jump in and show you some of these results. And so before I move through these, just some things that you're going to see, right? Our students continue to perform very solid against obviously New York State results, as well as our comparable schools. And these results are essentially extremely consistent with the way that our students have continued to perform over multiple years, right? Not any high fluctuations, high or low, right? And so I think one of the things that we can take from that is a healthy tier 1, well-aligned curriculum for vastly majority of our students, right? They're going through instruction in a given year, and when they get to these assessments that are designed to align with those standards, our students are performing at measures that are very well in terms of being prepared for that, right? So this one is our elementary school and ELA. You can see in grade 3, we had 75%, 71%, and 66% in grade 5. And I'm not here to kind of read all the numbers to you, but you can just kind of see how we go through. The comparable schools have been the schools we've been using for the last 4 years or so, based upon demographic size and social economics. It's a kind of a number that is utilized to pick those comparable schools, right? And then if I move into math, again, still 3 through 5, we see 85, 85, and then grade 5 has its classic, notorious slump, but every grade 5 seems to have in terms of testing procedures or test writing that happens across the region in a lot of ways. I would say last year was the first year that we had utilized our Eureka Squared math program, which was somewhat of a new program. We had been using Eureka previously, and this is kind of through that process we adopted kind of the new and improved version of that. And so, you know, one of the takeaways is that it seemed to have the desired results or continued the practices that we've been having a lot with our teachers in that way. Right. I'm going to now just fast forward briefly. This is grades middle school now, 6 through 8, going back to ELA, right? We see that our ELA scores in our middle school 6 through 8 tend to be very high in the 81%. I would say for grades 6 and 7, that shows a slight increase over what we've seen. And then 77% in grade 8, which continues to exceed comparable schools, obviously vastly exceeds New York State. Not that New York State is a measure that we would necessarily look at, but just in context of how these performances rank in terms of our state. Then we have our math 6 through 8. Again, it sounds redundant, but you know, it's illustrating many of the same concepts for us that we've seen with other results, and it's consistent with how we've been performing in past years. This is the science results for grades 5 and 8. Just a slight pause here. Our students fared extremely well in the new science examinations that were given in grade 5, as well as in grade 8. A little bit more on this as I project it in the future in the presentation, but one of the vast differences around the new science assessments was the length and complexity of the reading passages, the charts and graphs that students, a very different type of literacy that students were being exposed to, right? And the idea that they were to synthesize from that information constructed responses off of that. Not very different from maybe an ELA assessment at times, but in terms of the world of science, it's a vast difference change from how science was previously assessed in New York State, which tend to be very multiple choice based with small responses. This was a very big shift, which was more vocabulary based and much more reading comprehension based, and continues to be so moving forward. So this was the first time this had happened. Just a note in our Science 8, right, that's a place where there's different offerings. So some students take this New York State Science 8 exam, and then we have, which were 29 of our students, and then 42 of our students took the Living Environment Regents examination, right? So they're not taking the Science 8, they're taking a Regents exam in 8th grade. I'll get to that a little bit further. The reason why you don't have a comparable bar is that our comparable schools, many of them offer a Regents exam for all students. So they don't provide the option of taking the Science 8. They accelerate their 8th graders either in biology and or earth science at that point. It's a preview to a point we're going to talk about in a little bit. But as you can see, they perform very well. Now, we shift down to subgroups for these exams, and the batch goes to 3 through 8 at this point. And the reason there, just to remind, is our N number is so small in those areas that it's difficult to have a 3 through 5 number, because that number, for example, with students with disabilities, tends to be so small, realms on the statistical significance of it. And so we open that up to 3 through 8 and look at it in that context. And if you've seen these presentations in the last few years, it's almost, these charts are virtually the same, right? Our students slightly outperform or outperform our comparable schools. There isn't New York State data on this, and they stay relatively consistent in their performance over the last few years. This is ELA, and then slightly the same thing for mathematics, right? I'm going to move on to Regents examinations, if we don't mind. Unless there were questions or we wanted to pause for a second. My thought was to keep going.
Okay. We'll circle back.
Circle back, got it. So Regents examinations, again, measuring student achievement in specific courses, right? A Regents or an advanced Regents requires students to pass certain examinations. And so you can see a list of the exams that we provide in 2024. Exams have multiple choice and open-ended. Students take the exam when they have completed their course of study, and New York State utilizes a scaling method to communicate achievement of state learning standards, right? So it's not a direct proportion of what they get, it's a scaling method that goes into that. So start with our middle school who took Regents exams, right? So in living environment, we had 42 students, every single one of them passed, 100% pass rate, and you had an 86% mastery rate included within that. And then in Algebra 1, very similar, 100% passing rate and a 59% mastery rate, which is an 85 or higher. And that's for our middle school. Shifting to the high school-ish, right? So these examinations are scored on a 3, 4, or 5, excuse me, 3, 4, 5, yeah, measure. 5 means exceeding, and 4 is meeting, and 3 is partially meeting, right? And as you can see with our scores, which is 3 or higher, exceeding extremely well. So Common Core ELA, we have a 96% passing rate with a 67% mastery, and you can just see those numbers moving forward, right? So one of the questions that we gain out of looking at this, instead of looking at performance in ELA through like a 3rd grade or 4th grade or 5th grade, is also to see what happens when it gets to the Common Core 1, which is a requirement for all of our students in order to graduate. So one thing to look at would be, by the time we get to that point, we're looking at a 96 last year, a 96% pass rate with a high degree of mastery in that against learning standards. It kind of supports this idea that, you know, students learn at different paces, and these standards at grade levels are important to track and monitor, but kids can continue to grow throughout certain years to get to certain points. And I would say that having a high percentage rate in the 11th or the Common Core ELA has some significance when thinking about our literacy program K-12, right? As well as our results in other ones. These examinations are out of a level 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 instead, with 3 and 4 being proficiency and 4 being mastery. Living environment at a 91%, earth science at 90%, and then chemistry, which is a tremendous result of 99% with a 57% mastery rate in chemistry, right? Extremely strong numbers that come out of our high school in terms of their performance on their standardized scores. This is going to go to the second part of the presentation around how we utilize that, but I didn't know if we wanted to pause and see if there was a question on all that wealth of information provided.
You'll probably address my questions, but okay. I'll put it here anyway. On the chemistry, those are students that are freshmen and sophomores, or no? Meaning accelerated, that they were accelerated in 8th grade and then accelerated again in 9th grade?
So to get to chemistry at that level, some are accelerated in 8th grade, right? And then some then get double accelerated when they become 9th grade, in their pathway. I should say just 9th grade.
So that number is a mixed cohort, meaning yes. It's right. Whereas the living environment of 20, so that is a mixed cohort as well.
Living environment?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'll represent some of the 9th graders who accelerated in 8th grade, right? And then yeah, some of the 10th graders possibly who were taking it in the, after taking in the biology in the 9th
Got you. And then on the number for grades 5 and 8, New York State Science 8, 52% Haldane proficient. That's meeting the base level of proficiency. You said 29 students, so roughly half did not make that proficiency.
Accurate.
But then go into that mixed cohort in living environment and then succeed in
not always.
Next year, okay.
They don't always jump going from that into a living environment course for prerequisites.
Okay, because it might be earth science. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I had sort of a small question about, I've heard a couple illuminations about, you mentioned the state tests, was it from 3rd to 8th, we're going to computerized tests, or 4th, not 3rd graders, you mentioned 4th.
3rd will be.
3rd will be.
They will be.
Have you noticed, had they been computerized before, some of them?
No, in terms of giving them,
yes.
they had not been.
Okay, I was just wondering if you were worried about that, or if that has any type of, noticeable difference in.
Yeah, so I would say yes, it's something that we have many schools, including Haldane, we planned for. So the New York State gives simulation periods that we, so even prior to this test actually being administered, some elementary grade levels piloted. There were opportunities to just pilot. So 4th grade, previously to having to do it, have been piloting opportunities to do it as trial. New York State has been offering, like I said, simulation periods. They give us a window in which we're able to log into the system, and kids are actually able to go on and do some sample questions. It's not comprehensive by any means. But we took advantage of that for the last 2 years, and we're doing it again this year. It really allows a check on our system-wide to make sure that we've inputted things correctly, and gets the teachers to better understand the process of what this looks like. And there are some tools and features within the examination itself that you do need to make students aware of, right? I would say a lot of students are very tech savvy coming out of a COVID time where they're very remote learning, and there's lots of it. And so they're picking it up different, I would say. But it does look different. And so there is an intentionality around. So for example, in January, we come back, that's when the simulation period opens, and our grade levels are going to participate again in it. It's really helped the teachers, really, quite frankly. And then a lot of the things that we do with kids are electronic anyways. They might not match it exactly, but conceptually it's there. So like any kind of testing, there is some test wiseness that goes into it that we've planned for and we've been implementing, but didn't seem to have much effect on the 5th and 8th grade that we had seen in our assessment results or anecdotal information from when they actually took the exam, or on a network or bandwidth or anything like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Jumping around, sorry. So I'd like to just shift again, just to talk a little bit about, there's that, and then the ways in which we actually utilize some data against this goal to engage in conversations with our teachers around our programs and make decisions and promote inquiry, which I really think is where we've made some tremendous gains in the last couple of years. And this has really been, a group effort. So my colleagues are sitting here, Ms. Jamin and Ms. Sniffen and, Dr. Silky and Dr. Cation have all kind of been utilizing this idea around, how can we use the data to inform some of our conversations that we're having. So I'm going to highlight a couple of areas to just kind of ground that in some way. So Ms. Jamin presented 2 weeks ago around literacy, and in trying to not sound redundant about it, she did a tremendous job highlighting all the work that we've done. What I would say is that work is very much so grounded in this reemergence of the Haldane learner profile that Ms. Jamin has kind of resurrected with her staff, which was really in its resurrection stage last year, is kind of pulling it together. But then this year is refinement of it in a way that we're actually to use this data and really make some of those conversations. So the thing I would say about the New York State assessments is, I can stand here and say it's healthy, the numbers look good, but I'm well aware that, whether it's 81%, that means there's 19% who have not, to your point earlier, right? There's half students who have not met proficiency, and those percentage points represent students. And that's where those conversations lie, right? Is what do we do around the students that are not performing in certain ways? Complex, and there's not a magic fix, but it's where the efforts need to be drilled into. And so one of the ways that we've also stepped back around looking at those numbers is that the Haldane learner profile, which I don't want to get lost in this data chart by any means, but just a preview of it. I don't know.
You're denied.
What is it?
I have the access. I grant access. Sorry.
Hit request, and then she'll get the email right away. If it's mine.
It's mine.
Oh, but it says hers.
It's mine. No, it's a copy that I made because I had student names on it.
Do you have your cell phone?
What's that?
Do you have your cell phone in your pocket?
I mean, how much time we got, Wayne? I'm not very tech savvy. This is going to be a minute. Talk amongst yourselves.
You gotta have that technical difficulty.
Technically, yeah, we need some music going.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. No, it's your
I got it. I'm on it.
You do a really good You've done that. Some comedy going.
Oh, come on. We're back.
It's like nice 20 seconds.
It's great, right?
Amazing.
You're proficient. You haven't achieved mastery yet.
Approach it. It's wrong to begin with, right?
You were the 1%.
Yeah. So I don't want to get lost in this in any ways, but I think one of the things that was drilled down was we have the New York State results that tell us this. We have NWA, which is a universal screener, which I don't want to lose sight of, that provides us a wealth of information. It does. More on that. But when it comes down to exactly where might students in our elementary schools struggle in the idea of literacy, we have administered a wealth of different assessments for every single student at multiple times of the year, at a better opportunity to try to better understand where we should target instruction against specific groups of kids and specific students, right? So obviously student names are redacted out of this, but you can see you have blue as exceeds, meets, approaching, and below. And Ms. Jamin and myself had spent the better part of the fall sitting with teachers, grade level teams, looking at this and promoting conversations, right? Discussions. What do we notice, right? What do we think? And it gets into a variety of conversations that help our grade level teams, collaboratively plan together around similar groups of students who are struggling, as well as informs individual teachers around their individual classrooms, around how to target small group instructions, around tier 1 instruction that best meets student needs within their classroom, right? That's kind of a highlight of showing this. And so it takes your New York State data and says, okay, as well as the NWA data, but really drills down on a more granular level that we feel are decisions that we could make around how we should be instructing students that we think are most targeted to accelerate their growth in what we feel is probably one of the most primary important things is students being able to read and decode on grade level by the end of grade 3, right? At a point like that is what you'd be looking for. Because that will allow them to really access everything Haldane has moving forward, right? And we know the longer that students go with having deficiencies maybe in some of these areas, just the more bifurcated sometimes programs can be about getting them the help that they actually need, which is a systemic issue in one way. So what we did with that is we partnered with a group called the Reading League. More on that a little bit in a second, but we had all this really great data and we found that, one plug, sorry, I have to really thank Andrea Saunders out there. She compiles all this information and she creates these spreadsheets for every single teacher in the elementary school. More on that in a second. And it's tremendous the way that she puts that and she facilitates that work. The Reading League had a service that we could provide them this information and they would tally the information for us and provide us. So Ms. Jamin shared this chart with you guys a couple of weeks ago, but I just wanted to talk about it. This just talks about the oral reading fluency, which is a specific subset of a test that we provide, right? Which is really just tracking the accuracy and the fluency that students are able to read in a particular time against, how many words they get wrong or incorrect, right? So what we've come to understand around this is it tends to be one of the most impactful assessments you can provide in terms of the data it will give you in a very short time and how you can make decisions based around students' literacy from their performance in it. And so not around aligning of standards, this is straight reading comprehension and decoding and development. We provided it and we had found they gave us this information back, which, our students are consistently performing at very high levels in terms of it. So in terms of our MTSS tier of assessments of tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, what we've signaled out of this is that many of our students do have these reading capabilities and the plateau doesn't mean that they're plateauing. It means they continue to move at grade level expectations throughout the year. So it was just another measurement of an attempting to measure our elementary literacy program, which we didn't walk away and say, oh, this is great. It gives us pause to say, okay, there are aspects of what are going on that are working very, very well. And it buys more time to be thinking about other things that we'll talk about in a few minutes, right? If these numbers were much, much lower, it would be indicative of like an acute issue that we need to get in there extremely fast and fix, right? But as Ms. Jamin talked about the other day, the practices teachers are doing in classroom has changed over the last couple of years. The way that they instruct students, best practices aligned to science reading has really elevated as a result of looking at some of these. Right? And then this is what it looks like this year, right? Just to kind of show you the same thing. The grade 1, don't take too much in there. There's a little error in that one, but they gave us this information anyways. But this is our oral reading fluency right in the fall of where students are. So, our students continue to come in with what we believe are strong skills in that. That being said, it does represent a portion or population of students that are not meeting these expectations, right? I don't want to lose sight of that piece of it, right? And so really, when we talk about the use of data for evaluation, inquiry, and decision-making at the elementary school, it hits multiple areas. So the first I talk about is classroom instruction. So as a district, we've been discussing with all of our K-12 teachers ideas around universal design for learning, right? Which is a framework for thinking about how you plan instruction on the onset of instruction to meet all of your learners in your classroom, to remove obstacles at the onset of instruction, which is similar but a little bit different than differentiation. Differentiation is during instruction, like you've noticed as you've gone through a series of learning that you need to differentiate in ways. This is trying to capitalize on the ideas of engagement and understanding that as you know your class in front of you, there are ways that you can proactively design lessons to really engage students and move them forward. Obviously, it's been instrumental in our research-based practices around the science of reading. Jamie presented last 2 weeks ago around that. Practices we've stopped, practices we've adopted, and practices that we think we need to think about adopting in the future, right? And consistent with our work around targeted small group instruction, which we've been utilizing our literacy consultant for the last few years, but it really informs that idea of group station work and how we're really planning that work and providing students within that classroom what they really need based upon this stuff, this data, to really target where we think that they either need to grow or to move up. Professional development, it's kind of great conversations with Ms. Jamin and myself and teachers. First is obviously NWA, which is last year. I'll get to that in a second, but the whole district kind of re-upped on its NWA professional development and how to utilize those reports. But we've gone out and contracted with the Reading League all of last year to provide a common experience for all of our teachers to build our knowledge around the science of reading. Teachers went out and did the New Pulse Micro, which was tremendous, but we definitely felt like having all of our teachers in the room and hearing a consistent message and having common language was really important for our work moving forward. And then Megan Hargrave is the literacy consultant we've been using for the last 3 years and continue to contract with. And she really provides that extra data piece around how to plan targeted small group instruction around the information you're seeing, right? In our MTSS services, so it has really enhanced the way that we've targeted our tier 1, 2, and 3 services. And so when we talk about students who are not achieving proficiency, who have been recommended for AIS services, either at a tier 2 or a tier 3, those data points have really been instrumental in allowing our teachers to target what those tier 2 and tier 3 instruction really looks like. They have better information about what that is when they're going in. What it has put down for us, which is a need, is MTSS tracking program, right? So we have Excel spreadsheets that we have a teacher do, but there is software out there that will allow us to put all this information in, and that makes it much more accessible to our K-12 teachers moving forward. So it'll track students if they've ever taken any AIS service at any point in time, what those services were, if they exited, if they moved in. It's a refinement of how we want to collect that data moving forward and have a repository that we can look at, not just for academics, but it could be social emotional as well. So that's a need that we're looking for. And then obviously it really informs the conversations around curricular resources. So as Ms. Javin said 2 weeks ago, we are in the process of looking to adopt literary resources which best supports our curriculum. And so I think we're at a really good place with that, because you have a K-5, really K-8 faculty that is well-informed and knowledgeable about it. They have exposure in terms of practices, and the level in which we're analyzing these programs is really coming through. That always have that knowledge around what's best for us. Not to be forgotten in this conversation is math as well. And we have the Khan Academy program, K-5 now. And what that does is you can take your NWA score. So every student, after they take NWA, is provided what's called a RIT score, which is just an achievement level of what they've done at that point in time. You can enter that RIT score in, and Khan Academy will generate resources and problems that are tiered specifically to those students based upon that score. It targets the areas that they're deficient in or areas they could grow in, right? So that is utilized in small group instruction, so students log in. What I'm looking at is different than maybe Trustee McNeil is looking at, because our scores are different. And that's just as targeted as it gets. It makes it easier for our teachers to be able to do that. That's been really impactful, and we've just completed kind of that K-5 process. In the middle school, they use IXL, which is a very, very similar thing. And then 2 years ago, we identified the Preventing Academic Failure Reading Program that Dr. Cation really brought in for her Tier 3 students. So by no means is this the answers. It just represents ways that the elementary school has utilized this data to make some informed decisions and promote discussions around what resources, practices, development we would like to move forward with. I'm going to move on to the middle school and high school, but I'll pause for a second if there are questions around elementary. Just a...
Don't giggle. You knew I was going to ask something. So here's the deal. Grade 1, 68.8% on the oral reading fluency, jumps up to grade 2. So to me, that sounds like there's a significant amount of growth once there really are students. How many of our students in grade 1 are not our kindergartners? Because New York kindergarten is not mandated.
It's not mandated.
So,
I don't know the answer of how many.
It's a small percentage, or
Ms. Jamin?
This year we had 7 that were not ours.
They were not our. Okay.
And Ms. Jamin, what was the issue with the grade 1? There was some. It was a new assessment, and not being someone who administers it, I can't fully explain the details to you.
Right. Okay.
We have some questions around that.
The validity of it, anyway.
Correct.
Okay.
And I would also say the year before we did also see a lower first grade, but then they were at that 85%.
Yeah. So
at the end of first grade. So.
Yeah, it seems like what we're doing works really well, right? So it shows a nice curve. So the question is on that grade 1, if we had pre-K, which are our students then, right? Pre-K into kindergarten, that concept would be, that oral reading fluency. Is that age appropriate in which those kids are working on that material, or less so?
You don't do an oral reading fluency until the spring of kindergarten is the first time you would administer that.
I wouldn't suggest testing.
Yeah,
just we have access to the curriculum, right?
Yeah,
so,
I would hope to see even this year, the end of year kindergarten and the beginning of first grade next year, a difference with the new phonics instruction, with more science of reading that's really been infused. If we don't see a change, then I'm going to say, that's weird. What I thought we were seeing all of this with our internal classroom assessments. So, okay. Because the oral reading fluency along the way is looking like it's making a lot of growth. Mm-hmm. And we'll have those numbers I can certainly share with you. We'll have them in January for the mid-year oral reading fluency.
And I would say, I think to the point you made, having students in a pre-K gives us one more year of access to them with our curriculum and our things.
And our teachers, and kind of like our run,
Exactly.
Okay.
I had a question about Khan Academy math program. That is not the main math curriculum. That's kind of an extra.
Supplemental.
You had mentioned, Gemma, at the last meeting that there was something where that's like an extra enrichment, and that it doesn't always, it's not perfect yet, or something, just in terms of for kids when they're.
Yeah, so if they're testing, I think the question on that day was about, is it useful for the kids who are testing above grade level? And it isn't always, because as you get above grade level in math, you sometimes need direct instruction. Mm-hmm. And so if you just come across a new concept like algebra as an advanced early 4th grader, that doesn't make sense if you just come to an algebra question. You need someone to say, this is how that works. So it doesn't remove the need for instruction, but it does make a really good interactive station within the classroom and supplement to the curriculum.
So moving on to the middle school and the high school. So I say similar between the middle school and the high school is last year we had on-site professional development for all of our staff around how to use, or not how to use, a refresher on the NWA assessments. Part of that was pre-COVID, it was planned to have done, and then COVID had taken place, so it was a little bit rocky. And then we had something like 15 new staff members, throughout that time. And so not even everybody understood it. So it was a good time to just pause, and we had NWA come on in and provide professional development for our staff to ground them in the information, right? What the reports are, how to use the reports, and various things. So we've done that for both of our, for all of our teachers, K-12. And where you see the payoff is for both this fall at the superintendent's conference day under the leadership, so Ms. Sniffen at the high school and Dr. Silke at the middle school, facilitated with their grade level departments or grade level teams, these NWA results, and grade level teams got together, looked at the information, and used this information to target instruction, small group instruction, curricular development. It gets a lot into some of that information, and the adoption of different curricular resources. So that was something that we were purposeful about last year, and then purposeful about this year, making sure we provide teachers the time, particularly at the superintendent's conference day, to pause and take a look at that information against the results they have. When we get back from the break in January, will be the second administration of the NWA. And then when those results come out, we'll facilitate a very similar process with our teams as well. And that's been tremendous. It follows, it's similar in that because it's around creating targeted small group instruction around the needs of students. Teachers, some of the reports that are really utilized is, they get this RIT score, which provides, and there's grouping mechanisms. You can group students by a variety of aspects about their RIT scores that allows you to differentiate and create class groups that way, or small group instruction. Really helps teachers in that process, which has been tremendous. What I'd like to also highlight that Ms. Sniffen has done at the high school and took it a step further with her department chairs is a department analysis of Regents results, right? She facilitated these two things called the gap analysis and p-values. Now, I don't want to lose you in this one either, but I do want to show you for a second what we're talking about here. So this is provided, and this is around the Regents examination in geometry, right? It's the building benchmark. And again, not to lose, but what this report provides us is the specific performance indicator that was assessed on that, and how our students performed against that specific performance indicator. So red is not good, right? Standing with that. And it will tell you, I can't see, it's too far away. But it just says in terms of performance, how well our students either, it just does the work to say, a lot of kids got this question wrong, right? And it continues to go through and show all the ways that our kids got questions correct, right? And so when you think about it, for department teachers to sit and look at this information, it really allows them to just go back and take a look at their curriculums and say, what are the areas that we performed well in? And what are areas that we either need to refine or change to make sure that we're not seeing this score again? I would go back to the idea of promoting inquiry with teachers. And it's not Ms. Sniffen's presentation, but I would say that the conversations that teachers were having around this information is what's really impactful, right? Where they're sitting and looking at these, and you're talking, in chemistry, there was a 99% passing rate that you have the teachers are looking at, taking a look at what they got wrong and refining curriculum around how they can be improved, which is what we want, right, in ways. But it gets at a really high level refinement of what our curricular resources look like at our high school. And it's really a testament to the work that Ms. Sniffen is facilitating with her department chairs and that culture of looking at this information as it moves forward. Is this the one? No, it's not the one that I want to do. In addition to is p-value, I don't know what p stands for. I'm not going to get into it, right? This is a report that is also shared that on this column, it talks about the complexity of the question, right? So at the bottom, for vernacular terms, as the question was deemed to be less complex. And as it gets to the top, the question is deemed to be more complex. These funky numbers here indicate how well our students performed on those areas. So to the right is they performed well, and to the left are areas in which they probably did not perform well in certain questions. Again, an extremely useful tool as teachers are looking at. So like your eye just gets drawn to a clump. Okay, so you go back, you look at the actual, regionally, right? This is not New York State, but regionally, the performance indicators and what those are and how teachers can use this to refine their curriculum, right? So it's a way of taking granular data on New York State assessment results and using them for a curricular analysis type idea, right? Again, I don't want to get lost in it. We can have that. This one I'm not going to get right. Just this is regionally in blue, and then the bouncing ping pong circles are it's Haldane. So it's attempting to kind of show regionally how other schools did in the same comparison, right? Again, really spurs good conversations amongst our teachers around curriculum, right? An example that I want to show you about how this comes together in ways is this conversation. In earlier slides, I talked about it was hard to compare our 8th grade results to comparable schools because many schools do an advancement of all students in the 8th grade into a living environment. So we've started this conversation with our teachers around the expansion of living environment biology in the 8th grade. I'm cautious to say not for all, but ways that we might be able to be thinking about having more students take that class, right? The Regents exam information we saw shows that our students in living environment in 8th grade do extremely well, right? Those who are accelerated. And that there is a 52%, half of students that are taking Science 8 are getting mastery or higher. And this has been something that has been an ongoing performance for our students over a number of years. And so the question becomes, are we able to advance more students in? Conversations that it has is, it can reduce the number of sections in the high school that we have to offer to provide biology moving forward, which has conversations around if you're saving a 0.2, what class could you add on the back end of it to strengthen a science program as it moves forward, right? Which is a great conversation to have. But it really gets into a readiness analysis because as you have that conversation, enter guidance counselor and math department chairs who are saying, wait a minute, if you're going to start accelerating students earlier in science, you have to make sure that their math competency is also there. So we're not putting them in higher level science classes and they don't have the computational skills or the mathematical concepts in order to support their success there, right? And so that's a great conversation to be having as well, right, with people. We don't have an answer for it yet. It's ongoing, right? Right. So
opinions.
We have thoughts around what we might want to do, which would be other courses that we can offer that are as a holding place that still advance our coursework moving forward in a way. That's just a microcosm, just an example of one that we've been ongoing having. And all of our science teachers have been, since the beginning of this year, have been working with a science consultant to update their curriculums against the next generation standards, should we be thinking about moving forward on this. So there's also a curricular aspect that if you're going to be advancing, you want to make sure that students are moving through in the middle school, that they have the prerequisite knowledge. It's very similar to mathematics where you're compacting curriculums, right? You're not skipping one. You're taking a 3-year course and you're trying to get it done really 2.5 at times, right? So those conversations have been ongoing and it's spurred a tremendous amount of work that our science department has been doing in that, right? To kind of prepare ourselves to make sure that we're ready should that be the scenario that we'd be looking for, right? So that's the closure on my end of just kind of full circle of trying to think about ways that we've integrated data to complement our processes for how we ground conversations, evaluate programs, promote inquiry, and inform some decision-making within our buildings, classrooms, and at the district level.
We're doing these p-value charts all the time.
Was that?
Are those p-value charts conversations happening all the time?
I wouldn't say all the time, right? Look, there's more expansion to be done as we've gotten better. I mean, we can do these p-value charts all the way down to third grade, right? And have those conversations as well. They're not, as someone like, they're not yet. But we're, like I said, through the work that Ms. Sniffen is doing at the high school, it's providing a really strong roadmap to think about ways that we can have these conversations in the middle school, right? And then down at the elementary school. There's always, to be clear, is how much value you want to put into those conversations at grades 3, 4, and 5, right? It goes back to how do we assess what we value? And so there's always that wrestling, right? I don't want to say there could be a saturation point. Who determines what that is? I don't know. But we want to make sure that there's a healthy balance between what we're doing in some ways, I feel.
Well, there is an advantage with the comparable districts, the regional districts, especially when you look at Regents exams, because Regents exams are a moving target, right? So for any given teacher, you have no idea what's actually going to be on the test, right? And so you could think very myopically, like, well, that was a throwaway question. That's that came out of nowhere. But which happens. But if you're looking at your scores and you're seeing regionally that actually, other schools hit home runs, right, and we had a strikeout, that's an issue, right? It at least informs conversation, probably at best, right? Just for the purpose of reflection, just to see what is going on. So I think that's really valuable. I don't want to harp on the points too much, but just something to drill down, because we talked about kind of level 1, level 2, level 3 kind of supports, right? That we want to get as certain students. But we do drill down in this data, and there are issues with level 2, level 3 supports from what I'm seeing. And there's only so much that we can do, even when we extrapolate out that 3-8 subgroup, where we're still missing some students here. And when we have a incredibly small cohort of students, right, we want to make sure we cast the best net possible. So just something in the future to highlight at any given time, or Regina might be able to do it as well. But we've talked about this a little bit. Which one of those supports is really helping those kids? Because some of the we're doing well, right, according to comparables, but we want to be able to do as best as we can, and we want to be able to analyze those supports, right? We want to make sure that we're getting the best bang out of the work that we're putting our teachers to, right?
Yeah.
It was great though. Thank you, Josh.
No, agreed. And it's not to indicate that we stop, to your point, right? I think that trying to figure out, even with that oral reading fluency was, these are students at 35 or higher, but the ones who are not on that list, where are they, right? And where are they on that list? As we cast that net smaller or wider, what does that look like in ways? But absolutely agree. And it can absolutely be something in the future to take a look at. That's where NWA has the growth metrics that are involved in that at least allow us to see where students start from, where they get to, and it might not show up on some of these other things like New York State assessments, but to know that students are progressing at what rate is good information to know.
And you find significant value in the approaches that we have towards the data and testing in general, meaning your philosophy. The state is beginning to move away from the Regents for the purpose of graduation, right? And they can achieve that in other ways. But you know, in your mind, you know, this is the direction that we are continuing to go in through 2027.
Yes.
Okay.
Any questions?
Oh, I have a question, and this is I've asked this question before about it is often the case that our students with disabilities overlap with those who are economically disadvantaged, and I'm just curious about in the indication graphically how you represent both or how you include or exclude. Or...
Yeah, it's not a perfect system. So
Yeah.
the graphic information is what is from the New York State Ed data site.
It's just
right?
from
so
the
it comes from that.
Yeah.
But I do to promote inquiry, I have questions around how economically disadvantaged gets tagged
right.
in many ways. And you know, it evokes an image or a thought pattern around economically disadvantaged, and I don't know if it's accurate in some ways, right?
Yeah.
That's not just us, that's
right. That's just,
lots of places
yeah.
that it's difficult sometimes to better understand that. So the overlap you can see where a couple are, you know, labeled both probably.
Right.
Yeah, I just don't know how well that
yeah.
economically disadvantaged is a real true indicator of that.
Yeah, and my other question about when we talk about comparable schools, back to that 8th grade question of accelerated biology, it seems like we are, and for the most part, consistent with what we deliver, and you know, do better in a lot of. But why is it that our comparable schools have already accelerated biology, and Haldane hasn't? What are some of the reasons why they would have done it already, and why?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that, you know, Haldane has always offered an acceleration right. in it. To move it to all is, I don't know why other schools, I mean, it generally comes down, one of the reasons you accelerate for anything is to provide better opportunities at the back end of what you're able to do, right? So you're looking to get rid of, you're looking to go through graduation requirements quicker that allows you more choice at an end of a program to offer science research or any number of things, different APs or whatever that might be. That doesn't mean that they're not offering those in other ways. I do think, though, other schools may have different, based on size, they have different FTEs that allow you to capture students who don't do well in that course, and they're going to have to either retake it or they skip them and they put them in a different science class. And that doesn't always work out well either in some ways. So it's a way of accelerating from a curriculum to move through, but I still think it riddles the same issues where you're going to still have pockets or demographics of kids who don't succeed well, and then having to offer opportunities for them.
Right. So in essence, we're offering an opportunity for certain students to succeed in a way that another district isn't, by having the two options as opposed to.
Yeah. I don't know if it's, I think it's just, I don't know if the conversation has been, is there an impetus for wanting to do it, or a rationale as to why? And that conversation has just started to happen. Right. And with the new, I think timing also comes as we think about new changes in graduation pathways or requirements that could lessen some of it. And so if you can, I do think there's an opportunity to, the more students you can get through to get done with that, just creates more opportunities moving forward, which I know has been the impetus for the conversations at the high school is how could we expand program in some ways? And that might be a place to do that.
There is difference between the course and the test, though.
And the test itself,
So by not, not putting every student in 8th grade in that class, which is effectively an accelerated class, right? That, it allows, differentiation for those, for the cohort.
Exactly.
Overall. So, it is, and to the point that Josh made, the idea that you would have to capture those students in other than high school sciences, which, you still have to be able to make the whole.
Exactly. Rather than supporting them in 8th grade, you have to support them in 9th.
If I could add to it, just maybe an outside.
You have some experience,
perspective.
Carl.
Well,
Yeah.
he's sort of an outside perspective, and now having conversations with the team. I do think it is something that the district certainly could move towards. Having living environment, which will soon be called biology, for all 8th grade. Many districts have moved in that direction. I think the idea to your question, Sean, is if you set an expectation here, you may get something here.
Yeah.
But if the expectation is lower, then you may not have your students meeting their full potential. That being said, Ezra makes the point, this is a high school level course. Developmentally, maybe not every student is ready to take that course in 8th grade. And I think you do have to have some safety net options in high school for students who maybe cannot master all the skills and concepts.
Yeah, I mean, what you're describing actually is, I think we're in agreement insofar as I'm curious about other schools' decision to accelerate when it seems like not all students are ready to be accelerated. So it seems like having the optionality in our middle school is to our benefit, so long as, you know, obviously there's going to be a gear shift towards providing the kinds of the kinds of curricular intervention early on so they can succeed. I was just curious as if it was largely a financial decision for other middle schools, or, you know.
No, I think philosophically, you know, setting high expectations, but another thing to look at what supports are in place for students who may not be completely ready for such a rigorous course in 8th grade. Looking at how much time, how much lab time. Districts have increased lab time. Yeah. So there are many considerations, and there's also consideration of alignment, which the team has talked about, aligning your science curriculum 6, 7, and 8 to make sure they are prepared in 8th grade. Josh even points out a lot of math related to science. So in my opinion, you have real opportunities, particularly with new graduation requirements on the horizon, to rethink some of this. I also agree, just make a point Josh said earlier, to emphasize that you have a very high performing school district. You know, when I was considering, when you were considering me to join you, I did look at a lot of the student performance data. High school, consistently high performing, recognized blue ribbon, that's all based on our performance data. Also, the grades 3 through 8 ELA data, I think, places our student performance in the top 4% of New York State. I think there's maybe 730 schools. And I want to say, you know, you're right there with the top schools across New York State. So to proceed slowly with all of these decisions, I think is wise. And Christine and I had some conversations around Josh around ELA. We're doing great work here. Yeah, you know, the teachers are, you know, do you just go with a program when you're having a lot of success? These real complex discussions, as Josh said, though, I don't think if we were struggling and the performance was very weak, there may be more of an urgency to have to let's try something new. But what you're doing is working. There's been a lot of investment of time and energy over the past 2-3 years, as our administrators have showed you. And the last thought I will leave you with is, a couple of weeks back, 60 Minutes did a profile of Conmigo. So Khan Academy now is integrating AI. I want to say it's being piloted in maybe 200 schools across the country. And basically the concept is that every student has, on their performance and the data that it's collecting, has like an individual AI tutor. That's interesting. And that's powerful. And that is very near in the future, I think, for all of education. So just another thought. I'll send the board in your Friday update. I'll give you the link if you missed it. It was fascinating. And you know, Maggie brought up Khan Academy, and a little scary. But I would even think a lot of the programs are going to all be integrating more and more AI in the future. And it's just a really powerful tool.
Yeah, Anderson Cooper didn't ask any hard questions.
You did say
no. He's a Vanderbilt.
That's right. I know what are you gonna do.
I think this is just a very brief historical perspective question. Back when like the grades 3 through 8 state assessments were coming, I guess a little bit over a decade ago, I wasn't here, I was in the city, so it was a little bit different culture, but there was a lot of fear around, oh my gosh, March is gonna come, we're gonna have to shut the door, and it's just gonna be grind, test prep. And I just wanna kind of, my first year on the school board, like what's the culture of that? Like, you know, I guess, you know, with having kids in the district, I'm not really seeing that so much, but are good scores a result of, you know, is there a lot of test prep going on, or is there a real sense that it's a much more authentic style of assessment?
Yeah, I would say that there's always preparing students when there's an assessment, right? The high school, computer-based, whatever it is, you want to make sure that kids feel comfortable in the format of what that is. To your point, no, I don't believe it's a shut the doors and all we're going to do for the next month is rote rehearsal of these things and constructive responses. I think it's more of an indication of, you know, we say it all the time with our teachers is the standards are our roadmap for how we design instruction, right? And so if you have these assessments that are technically aligned to the standards, right? What you do from September all the way through is really where all that good work goes into. And so, you know, the ways in which they have to respond are modeled and are woven within the curriculum and what is being asked of them from the beginning till it gets there. So it's not so much, hey, we need to stop and go over how you write all of this. It's embedded in what you're doing already. I do think that, you know, prudently, there's opportunities to say, this is what you're gonna have to do. You have to sit here, it's gonna take. If you have questions, I might not be able to help you. Like there's all of that to get them involved in it. But I kind of know scenarios of what you're talking about. And I would say that is not the culture I have seen here since I've been here in any way, shape or form.
And if I could add under APPR, when your children probably were in that age range of frequently testing,
That shifted things
the test scores were tied to teacher and principal performance evals. And I think one of the smartest things that the new commissioner and new administration has done, we've done away with that because we learned that I think, well, the only purpose it served was to create a lot of anxiety with teachers, believing that they were going to be judged on student performance. And the student performance, the way Haldane is using it and what Josh described, and it should be used to inform instruction and inform curricular decisions, not to judge individual teachers. And I think they acknowledged it was a big mistake, but it created tremendous anxiety.
Thanks for addressing that.
So one last thing, Josh. So Carl made a good point about suggesting that, you know, this is something, you know, putting the living environment, you know, it's possible to squarely put it in the middle school curriculum with middle school transitioning to a 5-8. Mm-hmm. Does that present a benefit to doing that, or does it not matter?
I mean, I think anytime there's you know, if you're going to put 5 on the same schedule and teachers around with the other 6th, 7th, and 8th, there's a benefit of access in terms of collaboration. I think that helps. I think it can be. I think if we're going to move in that direction, you also need to think about it's not just a 6, 7, and 8 scenario. It's a 4 or 5-ish. There's other work you can do in those areas that can help spread that out a bit in order to make kids, you know, better prepared to take it in 8th grade. So 100%, it needs to happen regardless of when 5th grade moves up or not, right? Like you still have to do that kind of work anyways. 5th grade's in that tricky spot this year because they're also on the receiving end of having to do assessments. And then we're going to be asking them at times to be thinking about preparing kids moving forward.
Well,
so it can't be too bad.
Yeah, just kind of about like aligning curriculum. You know, I mean, if you say, guys, this isn't an accelerated program for some of our middle school students. This is a capstone class for our middle school students. Is it, you know, that's the question. You provide that for reflection and say whether or not that's valuable or not.
Exactly.
I don't know. I'm asking the question. So.
No, I think it is. We've even looked at at the middle school, we have some elective classes that all students take through. So like ecology is one that sixth graders are taking as elective, and it's an opportunity to where can some of these standards live in that, right? Like, you know, time, right? Presence with kids. So absolutely, to be looking at younger grades as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm sorry Peggy wasn't here to see it.
Oh, I can imagine she is disappointed, but she has either already sent Josh
so thoroughly
emails.
in her
She's
schedule.
either already sent Josh
I haven't
emails
checked my email.
or will send Josh emails.
My phone was just buzzing the whole time.
That brings us to our first communication from the public. I don't know if anyone's here, but if they are, the Haldane Board of Education desires and values input from the entire school community. The first public comment session is reserved for comments on special presentations and active agenda items. For those who wish to address the board, please sign in and state your name for the record. Please keep your remarks to 3 minutes or less. Disparaging remarks and discussion of district personnel are strongly discouraged. Although we do not engage in dialogue, we are listening. Anybody? Okay. We have our administrator information reports. Mrs. Sniffen, among other things, talked about the juniors and seniors that were inducted into the National Honor Society, which is interesting. Our director of facilities gave an update on obtaining grants for electric buses. There's a lot of good stuff in there. Consent agenda minutes. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Minutes from our last meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Committee minutes. This is from our most recent policy committee, and we're actually going to talk a little bit about some of the work a little bit later, so we can, if anyone had any questions, we'll answer those when we get to the policies for below. Consent agenda financial. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Anything that we want to note here?
No, I think we're happy to have a merger with Garrison for modified girls basketball. It made sense. It allowed us to have a team for both schools,
Great.
which is great.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Consent agenda personnel. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Anything here?
No, I'll just mention to the board, FMLA. We made a change from the past where we are going to just have employee ID numbers just for confidentiality. Most people are not concerned about that, but we are just presenting it a little differently to protect confidentiality.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Unfinished business. Superintendent search update. We posted the job. The job has been posted. Right? I don't know if it was today or yesterday.
Yes, it is posted. I think it's not in print yet,
Okay.
but the electronic postings are
Yes.
live.
So, and I just wanted to thank, neither one of them are here, but our board president, Peggy Clemens, and Megan Shields, our district clerk, for really helping move along the sort of the front end of this process. And we were sort of thinking we would post maybe in a couple of weeks, but just wanted to get it out there as soon as possible. So they have really been going back and forth with PNW BOCES to make this happen on the language. So that's been posted. We are working on our timeline, and we're actually going to go into executive session at the end of the meeting to talk a little bit more about aligning calendars. I also wanted to thank Mr. Albano, who's been using his expertise, and we've been using his experience to answer all kinds of questions that we have, and Josh as well, Josh Elder, our director of HR, who's just been there to review things and help us along. So we're trying to sort of speed up the process that we can, so we can take our time where it really matters in terms of hopefully we'll have a good selection and take our time doing due diligence. So that's the update. If there's any questions about that.
That's great.
New business. CSC, CPSC recommendations.
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the interim superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the recommendations of the committees on special education and preschool special education as presented.
Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have a new policy, and this is just something, this is a first reading, just something we would, Michelle and I, and again, Megan would love to get your guys' feedback by the next meeting on a new policy that creates space for discussion when it comes to naming school facilities, memorializing things on school property, and even donations that have donors' names on them. Which we have down at the football field presently. So there is no formal process. So we thought that this would be good. Megan pulled together a policy there for you guys to read, and it's pretty basic, which is sort of, a good way to do it. But because right now it also will create a way to log these initiatives, because trees with plaques get moved and things over time get forgotten. So this will create sort of a process. So if everyone could kind of take a read of that, and any thoughts, I'd love, we can discuss it at the next meeting. And it also allows either us to discuss and vote on it, or we can designate the superintendent to sort of have the last word on it as well. So that is that. Then the next one is a first reading and adoption, unless anyone opposes. This is a required update to the non-discrimination policy draft changes. And I believe it's a lot about reporting these incidents and updating the language, but it is required. So this is one that we sort of go ahead and move on unless anyone has any questions on it. Okay, so we have the recommended action.
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the interim superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby waives the second reading and adopts the following Haldane Central School District policy as attached. Number 3420, non-discrimination and anti-harassment in the district.
We have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. This brings us to our second communication from the public. I don't think we have any board reflections. I'm going to start. I forgot one thing in the superintendent search. I just wanted to tell everybody who may be watching, or anyone here to be watching the website. We are going to announce, we're going to have some forums for different groups to come. Community can come tell us, what they want to see in a superintendent. So that will be posted shortly on the website.
I just want to reiterate my gratitude to Julia Sniffen and as well as Dr. Cation for the presentation you gave her at Garrison. It was great to be there and to be so well represented so wonderfully. So thank you for your time and effort and energy in doing that.
I will mention Macbeth. That was incredible. Jamie did a great job. The tech crew did a great job. The actors were amazing. Everything within that play was shockingly impressive. So it really, that was a testament to the work and the community here at Haldane. It was amazing. It really was.
Oh, I just would suggest, I know we talked about the regionalization, getting back next meeting. I feel like that's a short amount of time with the needs and strengths survey being due January 15th. And if we have any issues with it and decide not to go forward, it kind of doesn't make sense for him to work on it. So it's kind of like, why don't we decide if we have concerns about going forward with the survey, why don't we make a decision sooner than January 7th so that Josh knows whether to work on the survey or not.
That's a nice
Yeah.
Just appreciates that.
He was saying how much work it is.
Can
Like
I
that.
say something about it? I think I was at the Curriculum Council at PNW today with all the regional leaders, and this topic came up. There is concern, though, that if you opt out of it, they're still going to move forward with it, and you just kind of lost your voice, right? So I don't know. I mean, I appreciate the sentiment, but I don't think it's something that we prudently
would opt out of.
Should, for the reason of not doing the work, right? Like, it's okay. Like, I appreciate it in that manner.
I don't see any concern with putting it I would like to see the survey get turned in.
Yeah.
Personally, yeah, I think that makes sense. I was just suggesting that as a board, if we could, if we have any issues with it or concerns.
My only question
them.
is why would districts, Carl said there were a handful of districts that did not want to go forward. And so.
What are their reasons?
Yeah, well, is there a valid reason?
There, if I may say something about it, I think one of the things that has frustrated a lot of individuals that I've talked to is it's like 40 odd some pages long. And it's the bureaucracy of the state. They are literally asking you to go to the New York State website and pull information out that you have to hand put in. They have the information.
Bureaucracy.
They cannot extract it.
Well,
so they're asking us to do it and go. They literally say go to New York, like, and put in your Regents results. Like, we reported this 4 years ago.
Well, it started as a mandate and then became a conversation.
Right.
So
I don't know why
we're going to talk
about
it.
That is what people are frustrated with.
I got you.
And if I'll just add to that, they started. I don't want to prolong the evening here, but I think initially people had concern of losing local control. Now that's been addressed. My concern, I have no more concerns, but the districts that did opt out, their superintendents reported that they're already sharing, because we do have a statewide model of BOCES, right? And their main purpose is to facilitate sharing of services. So they view it as, well, in a similar way to why are we giving the state data that the state already has? And, why are we, duplicating efforts? We have a BOCES model that has worked for decades and decades. So I think it's more on principle that they're saying,
gotcha.
And the other thing is, there was some mention that maybe they would finance, if there were creative ideas, that maybe they would try to find some funding to support those ideas. That is what the commissioner is telling us. People are skeptical, though. They're saying, well, gee, you just did a foundation aid formula and you're struggling to fund state aid, and people are concerned about the federal dollars also. So, is there really going to be money invested in our ideas, or are we doing all this work for nothing? So that's some of the sentiment, but I agree with Michelle. Michelle and I were there. We had some conversation. I just don't see a downside. We do a lot of great sharing and collaboration, but maybe there are ideas that we haven't thought of that will be generated from the process.
I'll touch base with Peggy and maybe we can, I'm sure it's fine. I just wanted to, because she's not here, hear her thoughts on it, and we can move forward. We'll let you know.
Sure.
Way before the next meeting, I guess. Any other thoughts?
No, not for me.
Good. So I would like to just make a motion to convene into executive session to discuss matters leading to the appointment of a particular person.
Second.